Hello friends, and welcome to another video. My name's Anne, and I hope you're all doing well. Grab a seat, grab a snack, a cup of tea, just relax with this one because it's going to be a bit of a longer one. The editing is a little bit less, well, it's not as much for a speed paint. I just wanted to really take my time with this one and just be chill with it, you know? It has been a while since I've updated anything, or I have uploaded anything, I should say, and that has multiple reasons. It's not necessarily for lack of painting. In fact, this video has been sitting in my drafts for quite a while. It's more of a fact that it turns out I feel a little bit awkward doing voiceovers. So I do a lot of the editing, and then I get to the voiceover part, and I just abandon the project for a little while. I think part of the reason for that is that I don't live alone. Which means that people in the house can hear me do a voiceover, which is always a little awkward. So I tend to just leave it until a day where, for example, I'm home alone, like today. So here we are, finally recording voiceover for a slightly older painting. And the painting today is of a model from the 60s called Twiggy, who I don't know about the model herself, but I know that the style of her may have sparked like that sort of obsession with really thin models that lasted all the way until the 2000s, and still is a thing, let's be real, but it's getting better. I mean, her nickname was Twiggy for a reason. She was really thin as a twig, and I learnt about her in a documentary that was narrated by Michael King about the 60s and what it was like to be famous in the 60s. And this picture of Twiggy popped up, and while I'm not really into models or anything, I was mesmerised by this image, because her neck is just incredibly long, and then she has these big sort of doll-like eyes, and this sleek hair, and I thought it was beautiful, so I really wanted to paint it. I've not really gone with realistic colours. I really just played about a bit. Like the pink is Ultramarine pink by Szmal, and the grey that I'm using right now for the shadows, I believe, is just a mixture of paints that I had lying about in my palette. But you know, like sometimes you just need to play about, and this wasn't meant to be, you know, high art. It's also me just trying out this paper. I have done a bit of testing on it. It's Canson XL, I believe, and it is not cotton, it's just cellulose paper, but it's the biggest paper I have. So I was eager to try and paint something big. And yeah, I mean, the paper itself is not fantastic. Like, it lifts very easily, which can be good for beginners who like to erase their mistakes, but is less fun for the more advanced painters who like to work in layers. And the colours also get quite dull and a little muddy. So, not my favourite paper, but it is great to just play about on and make just really big paintings, which, yeah, was just a lot of fun. Like, I really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, it was just, I had a good time with this. Anyway, because this is such a long video, I'll probably not chat for the entirety of it, but I thought we could do just a little bit of a catch-up on some things. I mean, not that you've seen many videos of mine before, so it's not like you have a rich history of me and there's a new situation that you need to learn about. I don't know, maybe it's a good way to get to know one another, I'd say, if you're willing to comment and talk about yourself, or maybe I'll just chat about me. It's alright. I'm happy to just sit here and chat. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know when this was recorded anymore, actually, because it was, I think, several months ago. In any case, I have been painting a lot less lately, which is a shame, and the paintings that I've been doing were not so much paintings as much as doodles and playing about. Part of the reason for that is I have a job now, which is not quite full time. It's a minimum of 26 hours, a maximum of 32. And for that, I was working in the office, which meant that I had very little time at home to myself because the commute was quite long. So I would just get home, eat, collapse, and then go to bed, essentially. And I would take my sketchbook to work because I get the opportunity to do a bit of painting there because I work as a phone operator, essentially, which is a decent enough job. I'm very lucky to have a specific phone operator job that is about helping people rather than, calling up people in some kind of marketing scheme. But because I have so far only built up like one or two skills that I can help people with, I'm not too busy usually. Apart from certain times in the year, or certain times in the month where we get an influx of calls, I tend to have quite a bit of time on my hands during the day. I get anywhere between 3 to 10 minutes between phone calls, and on the days where you have like 3 minutes between calls, it's alright. You can just sit and do some stuff on the side, and then but when it's a really slow day and you get 10-15 minutes where no one really calls you, you have to have something to do. So I bring my art supplies for that, which is great. I have like a tiny little limited set that I bring with me, my little travel set. And I take a couple of select colours, usually random colours that I just select and put in there. And I take my little sketchbook and I just play about at work. Sometimes I paint something I can see, sometimes it's just, a bit of playing about with the material, see how the paint moves, sometimes it's just a bit of doodling. But it's nice. I feel very lucky that I get to do that. So it's good. And nowadays, I actually work from home because I've completely finished my training, and because, well, the pandemic is still a thing, sadly. But that's all right. Like, I miss my colleagues a little bit, but it's taken out the travel time, which was up to 3 hours a day. So that's been good. It's been good to just work from home. And I do feel a little bit more rejuvenated these days. Not sure if that's because I'm working from home, so the commute isn't there, and I have a bit more energy, or if that's because of the holiday I had recently, which did help. It was wonderful. Because I used to live in the UK. I currently don't. Currently I'm staying in the Netherlands, which is where I was born and raised. But for the holidays, I managed to go back to the UK to visit all my friends, go back to where I was living, and that was really important to me. That was incredible. I had the time of my life, and it was just fantastic to see all my friends again. So, yeah, it's been a good time lately. I'm lucky enough to have been able to just get by and be taken care of, to stay healthy. I feel incredibly lucky with that, even with the travel, because of course the UK was getting quite bad. But we managed to dodge everything, managed to take 1,000 tests, and yeah, it's been good. I'm very happy with it. Anyway, I could talk about the painting a bit more, but really, it's so far, like, it's a very limited colour palette. It really is just the pink hints of undertone and the grey overtones. And I will make it a little bit more interesting later, because I was fully aware as well that it was lacking something. But for now, what it was lacking most was value. So I had to add shadow, really punch up the value by deepening those shadows and just creating a bit more contrast. But yeah, I actually really like this painting. I have it in a drawer somewhere, which is a bit of a shame that it's hiding in a drawer, but I am quite fond of it. It's a good painting. I'm very happy with it because, I mean, faces are difficult, portraits are a little tricky, even though they're, at one point they were the main thing I was painting. It changes all the time. Right now I've gone back to sort of loose florals. But yeah, it always is a challenge to paint faces. But I think doing it on such a scale really created like an interesting challenge, because there is much more detail you get to work with. And that to me was an absolute joy. And which is quite funny because I used to mostly paint very small. In fact, when I started painting, I was terrified of painting on a large scale. Like, really did not want to do it. Like, because the larger you paint, the more detail there has to be in there. And the more detail you can put in there, the more realistic you can make something. So, painting large scale was very daunting for little beginner me. So I have loads of like tiny doodles in my old sketchbooks that are really, I have faces that are about an inch tall. And that was a good way to sort of practice and get started, because it made me familiar with sort of just the main shapes and not get bogged down in the details. But now I do have a bit more of that experience, and trying to work on such a large scale was quite something else. And it was a joy to really see something come to life like this. And I think one of the things that I enjoy most about working on such a large scale is not necessarily the detail, because I have absolutely no patience for detail. Consider it my ADD. I don't have patience. I don't like working on a painting for longer than 3-4 hours. I cannot do it. But what I do love about scale like this is I get to work in much larger brush strokes. I get to be really quite sweeping with the brush strokes. I mean, not right now, obviously, like I'm working on little eyebrows, but you know, you get to really grab your biggest brush and just swoop it across the paper and see the paint flow, and that is something I love. Again, I like to attribute that to my ADD, because when you have ADD, ADHD, or you're autistic or whatever, we tend to, our minds are technically understimulated, I believe, which means that we're always looking for extra stimulus, and that can come in various ways, including audio stimulus, physical stimulus. You see lots of kids with ADHD fidgeting. That is a physical stimulus to like engage their brains and help them focus. But also it can be a visual stimulus, and it is probably one of the main reasons why I love watercolour so much. It really just moves, and the way it moves and granulates and dances across the paper, for me, is a visual stimulus, and it calms me down. So it is almost like a meditation, really. And yeah, I mean, maybe that is the ADD, maybe that's, you know, a human thing, I don't know, but I do know that it very strongly affects me, and it is probably the reason why watercolour is my main medium. I really don't like working in really meant any other medium. I've tried some. I've very briefly played about with oils. It was okay, but not great. Acrylic, I will not touch it. I have played with acrylic in high school, and I will never touch it again. I despise acrylic. I think gouache is the only medium besides watercolour that I really sort of like working in, which is no surprise because gouache and watercolour sort of go hand in hand. But if I have to choose between the two, watercolour will always be my main love. But yeah, I have recently bought. I say bought. It was a birthday gift actually. It was a birthday gift from my best friend. It was a set of gouache by M. Graham, which is artist gouache, and it is quite unique in the fact that it doesn't really use any thickeners or other mediums to sort of bulk it up. Like quite a lot of gouache has a sort of chalky medium in it to make it more opaque, but M. Graham gouache purely relies on the pigment load. So it's very heavy on the pigment load, which is gorgeous, but it does mean it's a little bit more transparent, so it's quite close to watercolour. Anyway, back to the painting real quick. Like I said, it was lacking something. Sorry, my phone just buzzed. But yeah, the painting was lacking something, and I believed that was colour. So we've added some nickel azo yellow, which is probably like my favourite yellow if you don't count the earth tones, because it's so vibrant. It glows. It really glows and pops off the page. It's fantastic. But yeah, obviously not a realistic colour. I believe Twiggy was blonde, but she was like white blonde. I think. The picture I was working with was in black and white. So I was working with fully grayscale. So I could really have some creative freedom with it. I'm glad about that. The tricky thing was, though, obviously, like, I'm trying to layer in some depth now. So really darken those shadows again, because just constantly, you find that it happens quite easily on cellulose paper as well, because colours muddy and dull a bit easier on cellulose paper. It doesn't tend to as much on cotton. But on cellulose paper it does. And I find myself having to fight to regain sort of that contrast quite a lot, especially on this paper. But it might also just be an effect of the more colours you add, the more sort of even everything gets. So that's a tricky thing with value, is that it's not necessarily about how dark a colour is naturally. For example, yellow is not a colour we consider dark, but it is it is quite a punchy colour at times, especially like nickel azo yellow, as you can see here. And because it's so punchy and strong, it has a strong value. So it doesn't really detect as a dark colour, but it does bring quite a lot to the table. Which means that I have to fight to get more shadows in, and layering becomes hard because this paper just doesn't want to layer. Anyway, I am adding a bit of wax pastels here. Shush. Bit of wax pastel by De La Rowney. I believe the squiggles on the side are phthalo blue. No, either phthalo or Prussian blue. And I added some grey as well. And the paint I'm adding right now is Anthraquinone blue by M. Graham, which is just a wonderful blue. It's really nice and rich, and it just brings it to life a little bit more. That sort of loose approach that I am having right now, that sort of playfulness, is something that was very much inspired by Irit Landgraf, which is one of my favourite art channels here on YouTube. She does a lot of sort of abstract and loose florals, which has been wonderful lately because I've not felt as inspired or as energized to make like proper paintings, and using her technique has just been a really lovely way of just still playing about with paint and finding that sort of art therapy while not having to invest in like large works of art. And obviously like these squiggles are not florals, but they are sort of based on the same principle of putting down some squiggly lines with wax pastels which repel water and therefore repel watercolour, and then going over it with quite a loose wash. And the pink colour, I think this pink might be magenta. The previous one, I believe, was Quinviolet, though don't quote me on that. Like I said, it's been a while since I've actually painted this, so I can't tell you with full accuracy exactly some of these colours, but some of them I remember quite well. And obviously nickel azure yellow is always recognisable, very easily recognisable. I messed up here a little bit because I was splattering with nickel azure yellow, which is just incredibly staining, and it got all over her face, which did hurt a bit. I realised my mistake instantly and tried to fix it, and as you can see, failed. But I like the spatters on her neck. I'm quite fond of those. I think those work. Those on her face hurt a little bit. I think the one thing that maybe made me laugh the most was that spatter also got into my curtain. There's a very, very bright yellow spot in like that see-through bit of my curtain, and it is there as a reminder for me to be a bit more careful. It's a good thing that obviously this is not a rental home. This is a bought home. I am living with my parents for now, so it's okay. We can wash the curtains and no one will be too upset. Though I think even after washing, that spot remained, which is it's fine. It's there, and it's a reminder of me being just a little too excitable when it comes to art. And again, fighting with that contrast, just it doesn't look like much right now, but it does turn out better in the end. This is a slight sort of, ugly phase where you make mistakes and regret every brushstroke you put down. And you can see the mild panic as I'm desperately trying to just blot away the paint. But it's alright. We'll get through it. I'm actually surprised by how much I managed to fill this video with talk. I was expecting to need large bits of just music or background sound. I hope this is okay. If you prefer me just not chatting through it, do let me know, and I'll, just put some music on in the background. It might be easier as well because, obviously, I don't tend to record voiceovers as often when the folks are at home. But if you like this, if you don't mind me chatting along, I would love to hear that too. And if also the editing, because obviously this is not a speed paint, this is quite a long video, with much slower painting, and yeah, I really like watching videos like this, to see all the brush strokes go down. So yeah, I would love to hear as well if you prefer videos like this, a slightly longer format. You can always just mute the video, put on your own music and watch what's happening, or maybe shorter format is better, in the way of a speed paint, where there's less inane chatter and more sort of focus on the actual painting, and the whole thing comes together just a bit quicker, which also works for me. I don't mind that at all. But either way, I thought I'd just try something new and see what this is like. Yeah, I think some of the future videos will probably be shorter. This video just seemed fitting to have in a longer format, a bit of a slower format, with those larger brush strokes and the playing about. It just felt right. But yeah, some of the future ones will be a bit shorter. I want to do more of the colour by colour sketchbook series. I don't remember if that's what I called it. I should probably check. But yeah, the sketchbook series where I just go through each colour on my palette and try and turn it into a sort of one painting for each colour. Let's see what the name is. Oh god, why can I not find anything? Yeah, colour by colour, the sketchbook series. I did paint a couple of extra paintings that I didn't record in that, but that's okay, I think. I really just wanted to do one of those, and I didn't want to have to set up the entire recording process and the camera, etc. Because that can be a bit of a hassle, and of course, I do also want to paint for fun, so it can be tricky. Some other videos I was thinking of doing was I got some materials to make my own sketchbook. If you would like to watch me put that together, also let me know. Or I can just make that off camera and then you'll see me work in it. Yeah, I currently have, if you count those materials as a finished sketchbook, 2 extra sketchbooks, one of which I want to use for floral studies and one of which I want to use for architecture studies. So, like I said, I used to do a lot of portraits, but my interest sort of shifts constantly. And lately I've been doing a lot of sort of the abstract florals, Landgraf style, which has been nice, but I am sort of moving on from that again, losing interest because it can be hard to keep interest in one thing at a time. And I just wanted to get back to sort of doing studies and improving my skills. And I've always wanted to have quite a wide range of art skills. So obviously portraits, I had a lot of practice in beforehand. I've done a lot of that and I feel okay with where I'm at right now. But I am not very familiar with florals, especially not something that isn't a rose or isn't lavender, So I want to branch out on that. I want to be able to paint different types of plants and flowers and herbs, and I just want to make a proper little study sketchbook out of that. And the same goes for architecture. I really, really want to broaden my skills in that and go for loads of different types of architecture from across the world, and see if I'll probably start with quite realistic start and see if I develop it into something specific, if I can find my style in it, or I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so you'll probably see me do some stuff in those sketchbooks as well, because I do intend to do some of those studies on camera. Other than that, I don't know, actually. I mean, obviously I want to continue the colour by colour series. Oh yes, I was going to do a video as well on my palette, because I have currently a very large collection of paints, and that can be both a blessing and a curse. So I kind of wanted to do a little chat on that, which will probably be not a voiceover, but an actual live thing. Same goes for if I would film the building of the sketchbook. So if I made the sketchbook, I would probably do that more as a, live talk, not as a live stream, but recording myself talking while I do it, rather than doing a voiceover. So yeah, those are sort of future video plans. We'll see if I manage to do any of them. Don't expect me to have a regular upload schedule, because I don't. And like I said, I have a semi-full-time job these days, so I only have time really on the weekends. And I tend to try and keep the weekends for complete relaxation rather than having to work on projects. So yeah, apologies for the sort of lack of content, but hopefully you'll see a little bit more of me in the near future. We'll see. No promises though. But yeah, we're getting to the end of this video actually. As you can see, there's been a lot of sort of playful added elements. I really like the use of the wax crayons and the way her eyes are sort of green and therefore popping out a bit because it's a different colour. And there are those streaks of yellow. As you can see, it stains incredibly. But it's a nice effect. I really like, even though I tried to brush it away in a slight panic, it adds something to it, that brushed effect. So, happy accidents, right? But yeah, that's Twiggy. That's the painting. Anyway, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. Thank you for hanging out with me and listening to my inane ramblings. And yeah, let me know if you'd like to see more of these types of videos, or preferably speed paints. Yes, anyway, thank you. Yes, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day wherever you are. I'm gonna have to go and close my windows because it's starting to rain, so thank you, and